Lennox Lewis was the classiest heavyweight champion boxing has ever seen.
Everybody talked about Grant holding his left hand low, fluid it by pounding a right hand through it.
The British-Canadian giant dominated his era with superior technique and Olympic-level skills. But beneath that gentleman exterior was a competitor who held serious grudges against certain opponents. These weren't just ring rivalries. We're diving into deep personal animosity that has lasted for decades.
We're 4 minutes of hour of inaction.
Ooh, over the top, he's holding him, and he lands dead up.
Fighters who disrespected Lewis learned the hard way that calm waters run deep. When pushed too far, the polite champion became absolutely ruthless. Lewis carefully calculated his responses to insults and slights. He remembered every verbal attack, every slight against his abilities, and every attempt to duck him. The boxing world discovered that crossing Lewis meant facing consequences both inside and outside the squared circle. Some of these disputes started in amateur competitions and carried over into professional careers. Others began with promotional politics and contract disputes that turned ugly fast. A few were born from shocking upsets that damaged Lewis's pride permanently. We're revealing the 7 fighters who pushed Lewis beyond his breaking point. These opponents managed to crack his composed facade and unleash genuine anger from one of heavyweight boxing's most controlled performers. Number 1 will leave you speechless about what really happened. 7. Shannon Briggs. Starting our countdown at number 7 is Shannon Briggs, the motormouth heavyweight who irritated Lewis with his constant attention-seeking behavior. Briggs spent years calling out Lewis through media interviews and public appearances, demanding fights he hadn't earned through legitimate victory. Lewis despised fighters who talked their way into big opportunities instead of earning them through skill and accomplishments. Briggs represented everything wrong with modern boxing promotion to Lewis.
Then he got up, and then the right hand by Briggs just cracking, and this just a shooting gale.
The loud personality and manufactured controversies went against Lewis's belief in earning respect through performance. Briggs would show up at Lewis's press conferences uninvited, interrupting interviews to challenge him publicly. These publicity stunts embarrassed Lewis and forced him to acknowledge someone he considered beneath his championship level. Lewis preferred dealing with legitimate contenders who had proven themselves worthy. The breaking point came when Briggs started making personal comments about Lewis's British accent and international background. Briggs suggested Lewis wasn't a real American heavyweight and questioned his toughness compared to domestic fighters. These nationality attacks crossed professional boundaries into personal territory. Lewis eventually agreed to fight Briggs just to shut him up permanently. The bout became Lewis's opportunity to punish someone who had annoyed him for years. Lewis dominated Briggs completely, using superior technique to outclass the loudmouth challenger. After destroying Briggs in the ring, Lewis made dismissive comments about his lack of skills and questioned why anyone had taken him seriously as a contender. The victory allowed Lewis to prove that talking means nothing without legitimate boxing ability to back up the words. 6. David Tua. At number 6 is David Tua, the compact Samoan destroyer whose devastating left hook made Lewis genuinely nervous about accepting challenges. Tua possessed the kind of one-punch knockout power that could end any heavyweight's career in a single exchange.
Anybody, I don't care who they are, he will hurt them.
Lewis built his reputation on technical superiority and strategic fighting, but Tua's explosive style presented problems that couldn't be solved through conventional boxing wisdom. The threat of instant knockout made Lewis more cautious about finalizing fight agreements with the dangerous puncher. Contract negotiations between their teams dragged on for years as Lewis's promoters demanded advantageous terms to protect their investment. Tua's camp grew frustrated with the delays and started publicly questioning Lewis's willingness to face genuine threats to his championship status. The media pressure intensified when boxing writers began suggesting Lewis was carefully avoiding Tua while fighting safer opponents. These accusations damaged Lewis's reputation as a fearless champion and forced him to defend his opponent's selection publicly. Lewis resented having his courage questioned by someone who hadn't accomplished anything significant in heavyweight boxing. Tua's camp used media interviews to suggest Lewis was scared of the left hook, which infuriated the proud champion who had faced every legitimate contender. The situation became personal when Tua's promoters started calling Lewis a paper champion who only fought hand-picked opponents. These attacks on his legacy forced Lewis to eventually agree to negotiations, though the fight never materialized due to promotional complications. Lewis later admitted that Tua's punching power was genuinely concerning, but maintained that business considerations rather than fear prevented their showdown from happening during his championship reign. 5. Ray Mercer. Number 5 takes us back to Lewis's amateur days with Ray Mercer, the American heavyweight who handed Lewis one of his most painful defeats at the 1988 Olympics. Mercer's victory cost Lewis his dreams of Olympic gold and created resentment that lasted throughout their professional careers.
Who looked at the beginning of the round like he was starting to get tired, but when he landed a good...
Lewis had dominated amateur competition leading up to the Seoul Olympics and expected to win heavyweight gold easily. Mercer's upset victory shattered those expectations and left Lewis questioning his ability to perform under ultimate pressure situations. The loss haunted Lewis because Mercer wasn't considered the most skilled boxer in their division. Lewis felt he had superior technique and conditioning, but somehow lost to someone he should have beaten convincingly. This created lasting doubts about his mental toughness in crucial moments. When both men turned professional, Lewis watched Mercer achieve early success and win world titles before him. This added insult to the Olympic injury and made Lewis determined to prove the amateur result was a fluke rather than genuine superiority. Their professional paths crossed several times at boxing events and press conferences. Lewis maintained polite interactions publicly, but privately resented Mercer's continued references to their Olympic encounter. Mercer would smile and remind people about beating Lewis when it mattered most. Lewis never got the opportunity to settle their rivalry in a professional bout, which left the Olympic defeat as their defining encounter. This unfinished business bothered Lewis throughout his career and represented his biggest regret about missed opportunities.
Than he can, but I'm not finished, man. I mean, I'm gonna kick out ass whoopers like that myself to other people, so.
The amateur loss to Mercer remained a psychological scar that Lewis carried even after achieving professional success and world championship status in multiple weight divisions. Number 4 is Oliver McCall, the troubled heavyweight who delivered the most shocking knockout of Lewis's professional career and exposed psychological vulnerabilities that Lewis thought he had overcome through years of professional development. McCall caught Lewis with a perfectly timed right hand in 1994 that dropped the champion and ended his undefeated record. The knockout was so unexpected that Lewis's corner couldn't believe what they were witnessing as their fighter lay unconscious on the canvas. The defeat devastated Lewis psychologically because McCall wasn't considered a serious threat to his championship. Lewis had prepared for a routine title defense against someone most experts expected him to dominate through superior skills and physical advantages. Their rematch became even more damaging to Lewis's confidence when McCall suffered a mental breakdown during the fight. Lewis couldn't finish an opponent who was literally crying and refusing to engage, which made him appear unable to capitalize on obvious advantages. The McCall situation created lasting doubts about Lewis's ability to handle pressure and unexpected circumstances. Critics suggested Lewis lacked the killer instinct necessary to be considered among heavyweight boxing's all-time great champions.
Here it is, talk us through it.
Yeah, he walks forward like this. Lewis misses with the left hand, follows with the right.
Lewis privately blamed his preparation and mindset for the first McCall fight, but couldn't shake the feeling that he had been exposed as mentally fragile. The knockout became a symbol of his vulnerability to unexpected punches from unlikely sources. McCall's name became a trigger for Lewis's anger because it represented his most embarrassing moment as a professional boxer. The losses damaged his confidence and forced him to completely restructure his approach to championship defense. 3. Riddick Bowe. Number 3 is Riddick Bowe, the heavyweight who infuriated Lewis by literally throwing his championship belt in the trash, rather than defend it against the mandatory challenger. This unprecedented act of disrespect started years of bitter exchanges between their camps. Bowe had just defeated Evander Holyfield to win the undisputed heavyweight championship.
Uppercut for Bowe, left hook for Kutzer.
When Lewis emerged as his mandatory challenger. Instead of accepting the lucrative fight, Bowe chose to vacate the WBC title and avoid facing Lewis entirely. The belt-trashing incident became boxing folklore and represented the ultimate insult to Lewis's status as a legitimate contender. Bowe essentially declared that keeping his other titles was more important than facing Lewis in what would have been the biggest heavyweight fight possible. Lewis spent years trying to force Bowe into the ring through legal challenges and public pressure campaigns. Their promotional teams engaged in constant warfare through media interviews and press conferences, but Bowe remained committed to avoiding the dangerous matchup. The avoidance cost both fighters millions of dollars and deprived boxing fans of what could have been the era's defining heavyweight contest. Lewis's reputation suffered because critics suggested Bowe was smart to duck someone clearly superior. Bowe's continued success with other opponents while avoiding Lewis created additional frustration for the British champion. Lewis watched Bowe earn millions fighting everyone except him, which made the avoidance even more insulting and financially damaging. 2. Mike Tyson. Number 2 is Mike Tyson, the former undisputed champion whose psychological warfare and unpredictable behavior genuinely concerned Lewis despite his public confidence about their eventual showdown when both fighters were past their respective primes. Tyson's reputation for violence inside and outside the ring created unique preparation challenges for Lewis. Unlike other opponents who relied purely on boxing skills, Tyson brought genuine danger and unpredictability that extended beyond normal competitive concerns. The pre-fight promotion for their 2002 encounter became legendary for Tyson's erratic behavior and threats. Lewis maintained his composed public image, but privately worried about Tyson's mental stability and potential for creating dangerous situations. Tyson's press conference meltdowns and personal attacks on Lewis's family crossed every boundary of professional competition. Lewis had dealt with trash-talking throughout his career, but Tyson's threats felt genuinely menacing rather than promotional posturing. The bite incident with Evander Holyfield proved Tyson was capable of completely abandoning boxing rules when frustrated. Lewis's preparation had to account for potential rule violations and referee protection in ways that seemed absurd for championship boxing. Lewis's team implemented special security measures and changed training locations multiple times due to concerns about Tyson's unpredictable supporters and potential interference. These precautions were unprecedented for Lewis's previous championship preparations.
7, 8.
Lewis trying to land a haymaker.
Whoa! It's to everybody.
Despite defeating Tyson convincingly, Lewis later admitted the entire experience was uniquely stressful because of factors completely unrelated to boxing skills or normal competitive pressure from facing elite opposition. 1. Hasim Rahman. And finally, number 1 is Hasim Rahman, the unheralded contender who delivered the most humiliating knockout loss of Lewis's entire career and created lasting resentment that consumed Lewis for years after their initial encounter in South Africa. Rahman was supposed to be a routine mandatory defense for Lewis in 2001. The fight was scheduled in South Africa as part of Lewis's global championship tour, and nobody expected Rahman to provide serious competition for the established champion. The fifth-round knockout stunned the boxing world and left Lewis flat on his back, staring at arena lights while Rahman celebrated the biggest upset in heavyweight championship history. Lewis couldn't comprehend how he had lost to someone considered a significant underdog. The aftermath became even more painful for Lewis as Rahman's celebration and media interviews seemed to mock the former champion's reputation and accomplishments. Rahman acted like he had always known he would win, which infuriated Lewis, who felt disrespected. Lewis made excuses about altitude, preparation, and circumstances, rather than giving Rahman credit for a legitimate victory. These complaints made Lewis appear like a sore loser and damaged his reputation for gracious behavior in defeat. The rematch became Lewis's obsession, as he demanded immediate revenge against someone he considered beneath his championship level. Lewis trained harder for Rahman than any opponent in his career, driven by personal embarrassment rather than competitive respect. From Olympic grudges to championship humiliations, these rivalries reveal Lewis's hidden competitive fire. Which upset surprised you most?
Just throw the right hand and come back with the hook.
Between rounds.
Hit like and subscribe for more heavyweight boxing secrets.